So Enoch and sound like Matt, would you guys like to take the first 10 minutes or so?
Sure. All right. So, my name's Enoch. My real name is Mike. I'm a production manager. I run a sound company, does live events. And so, when I saw the comment period looking like maybe they were gonna strangle it out, and people were submitting to have the comment period extended, I figured it wouldn't hurt to put in for a protest permit, and it ended up being a good choice because they rejected the extension of the comment period. And so now we're in a position where we uh, actively have permits being looked at by the Parks Department right now, and I have a meeting on Friday to finalize them. And I have my production company. I'm going to front a lot of the gear, and anything I don't have, we're going to rent. And then we're going to have some people on staff just running the event. So then UFDA Crew can run the protest. And we're probably going to set up Friday between 7 and 10 a.m. We'll have the park getting set up, and we'll have stuff for picketing available. And as people get to DC and they're traveling and whatever, they can just move over to the park and hang out there. And it can kind of be like a meeting zone where everybody touches base, pickets if they want to, and then that'll just be right out in front of the FAA headquarters, which is right across the street from Hancock Park. And then the next day we can have a full day of protest with a rally, a large picket around the two FAA headquarter buildings. Maybe talking to media if we can get media involved down there. We can set up a small media stage for them to watch the people giving speeches. And if people want to give speeches, they can submit. They can send like a little blurb to me about yourself, because depending on how bad the Parks Department is, I'm gonna have to submit everybody who does a speech.
Have any of the media companies responded to you at all?
I've gotten small media inquiries, like small newspapers. That's been the number one thing happening right now. And I've been telling everybody to hit up their local newspaper and tell them that you're going to go to a protest in Washington D.C. and what it's about and why it matters to you. And I think that that's a really good plan in getting the word out about what's happening. And like the local media is going to be the least likely to be scared of people playing in a field. You know what I mean? Flying some drones over some trees. Like the local media is going to be the nicest. And when we get to the big media, they're going to just have a narrative that they're going to run with. So we're going to want to be ready for them with a narrative. And that's what it comes down to. Being at the protest, everybody should not bring their drones. It's a no-fly zone, so no reason to bring your drones. Maybe bring pictures of stuff that you're gonna lose the ability to fly or something. Like make posters. We're gonna supply some posters, some stakes to put stuff on if you want to make your own posters and stuff. But in general, we're gonna try to just assemble as many people as we can and get noticed. And up until the protest, we're gonna be trying real hard to hit up media and hit up other groups that could maybe protest with us in solidarity. There are some Washington D.C. based groups that do that. So if they like the cause, maybe they want to come and defend STEM access to this technology, they might come out. But yeah, it's a general plan. But I just I had the ability, and I just wanted to deploy at least all the permitting stuff in case we needed to do a protest, and it looks like it's needed, and I think that we should do it. And I've got everything set up, and UFDA Crews helped me get all the ducks in a row. We got a website for the event called Help Save Our Hobby, and that's at helpsaveourhobby.com. You can go there, and there's links to all sorts of stuff, and we're going to keep adding stuff. So we'll have links to the metro and the bus schedule. So if you get into town, you'll have that available right on the website. anything else that we think is going to be helpful or a good tool, we're going to add on there. Help direct you to do something valuable with your time in DC.
And as you mentioned, Mike, this is February 29. Saturday is the day, and then you mentioned Friday you'll be setting up, and there'll be things for folks to do to help and participate. And I think I see that you're well on the way to the $5,000 you want to make to cover expenses. And so I would encourage folks here, if you can, contribute to this cause. I have, and we'll be sending one of us from one of the four of us of the FPVFC down to Washington to support and participate in this effort.
Well, thank you for your donation, and thank you for your support from the Freedom Coalition.
Absolutely.
And anybody who can make it down, I think it's going to be not only a show of force of the community that we've all been a part of for so long, and we don't want to lose, but it's going to be a great opportunity for us all to unify around something that's not random bullshit, or a part that came out.
Do you have any
Absolutely.
predictions or hopes for how many people are going to show up?
I don't. This was a if you build it, they will come kind of scenario, and I'm just
That's
hoping
awesome.
everybody shows up. Right now, it's looking like a few hundred people are looking at the event on Facebook. I don't know how many people use Facebook to be able to plan their life around that event schedule, but hopefully 100, few hundred. I put the permit in for 1,500, so if we break 1,500, we're doing good. Now I have to resubmit permits. Let's aim for that.
That sounds like a good problem to have.
Another big thing with this is it's peaceful. Like that's like no riffraff, no nonsense, because I mean, even if somebody has to do something to stop any kind of riffraff, that's going to look bad too. And
Right.
I mean, yeah, we might be a rowdy bunch, but at the same time, we want to do this right. And when you spreading the word, let everybody know that's that this is all that stuff can wait for Sunday or something like Sunday
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Right.
This
UFDA
has
Crew
to go.
maybe like having fun all the time and doing memes and all that stuff, but when it comes to this, we've made a front-facing organization for Help Save Our Hobby, because it's not about the fun. It's about saving everything that we're all doing. It's it's not only about what we're doing, but it's about what you guys are doing, and everybody's doing something different. And I think
Yep.
that's what's beautiful about all this. It's like the innovation is just rampant, and I'd hate to see anything get in the way of that.
And no one should bring an X class with a banner and fly it around in front of the protest, right?
Probably not.
No drones.
Probably
No
not.
drones.
Yeah, not even
Yeah, no, I'm bringing my
whoops,
S class.
and,
We got
Bring your whoops, but save them for the hotels.
Yeah, don't
Get a
fly
lot of
down
hotel footy.
There you
That's
go.
still illegal in DC.
Inside a
Not
building?
Inside can't. No, inside's not. But yeah, I mean, he's right, guys, and it's very important. I'll be going to support the FPVFC and you guys. I really look forward to it. I think it's going to be a good deal. So just let me know, Enoch or Gravy, if you need me to do anything before I go, and what I can do once I get there, because I will be there to help.
I just want to
Cool.
say
Thank
one
you.
thing, if you guys have ideas, hit us up, because we may, the part that we were able to facilitate is getting to DC and having an event, right? There's a lot more that we can do in DC, And so if people have good ideas and they think we're going to be able to organize to go and do that good idea while we're in DC, we should take advantage of that and hit us up. And if it's good enough, we'll throw it on the site and try to organize as many people around it as possible.
Can I make a suggestion? I don't know, maybe a couple people would be willing to help with this. If I'm there, I'll be willing to help. Set up a table with a laptop or a couple laptops, help people write up their comment.
Yeah,
It's
so
not a
we were
bad idea.
thinking of I was asking Zoe if she had a hotspot so that people could comment live like that. And I think that's a really good idea, and especially if we have like a video right there of like, there's some real nice like guides to it, how you're going to do your comment and how to make it impactful. And I think like somebody has a little bit of watching that and then jumps in to make a comment, we can get a bunch of comments there too. Maybe from regular people walking by because it's right next to a metro stop.
I can bring a hotspot. I can get one for free from the local library. So I can do that for 2 weeks. I got no issue with that.
I've got an unlimited data mobile hotspot on my phone, so I can hook up 10 computers to that.
Yeah, I've got a dedicated.
I wouldn't suggest it, but
540 hotspot.
So the more the
I think
merrier.
the type of people that'll be there, we'll be able to figure out anything we need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Enoch, would you like any help writing up a press release, or is there anything along those lines that we can help with?
I mean, yeah, that might be helpful. I'm not particularly a press release guy. I'm more like the guy in the trenches getting the shows done.
Yeah,
Usually.
I'm pretty accustomed to writing releases, and if you use it, great. If you don't use it, it's not a problem. So I'll write something up and send it over to you.
Hell yeah, man! I really appreciate it.
So John
Alright.
Solo
Big thing is
posted
to-
in the general chat. They're asking if anyone knows any celebrities or big names that can help support this or show up in DC. I don't, but maybe somebody else does.
Like hobby celebrity and big name, or just like big names in general.
I suppose either would be great.
Actually,
well,
you know
Drew's
what?
already going to be there.
Well, you know what we could do is we could reach out anybody that has contact with Ryan Bader, I think his name was, the pitcher that was
Yeah, from Detroit.
like yeah. Like maybe somebody, if anybody knows him, we can reach out to him. I know the Rotaract crew that has had contact because I mean he was in an episode, and then maybe he can. I mean, there's plenty of other famous people. That
Yeah,
fly
there's that indie driver too that Drew knows.
Yep. Yeah, the guy that does the high speed.
Yeah, but he's also
Yep.
a racer, FPV racer. So
Yeah.
I just forgot
Yeah,
his
yeah.
name.
Does that professional
Yeah.
baseball, I think he was a pitcher, still fly at all?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I
Who
guess we'll
was it
find
again?
out when somebody reaches out to him. I want to say his name was Ryan Bader, but I could be completely wrong. Also, another
We should try to get a hold of Adam Savage from Tested because I know he's
Yeah.
a drone pilot.
Yep. Same
We
thing
should
with
definitely get a hold of him.
if anybody's got to connect for Deadmau5, that'd be great. He's got tons of stuff. That's like his passion.
I just don't want to call the guy.
All right. Any other questions for these guys and on the protest? All right.
I was thinking that having a display table or something out there showing people that it's not like we fly these giant delivery drones, but I mean, I know it's illegal to fly there, but I drive through there all the time for work, and I keep my drones in my car all the time. So, but
Yeah,
most people don't have a clue what we actually fly versus what
story.
they're regulating to, and
Yeah, I think having display tables is a good idea. We're gonna be bringing a bunch of folding tables, and we're thinking like the commenting thing or, other things that people could use tables for. And I think like a display table that people could put their stuff on and show it off. I mean, that could be helpful for
I'll
sure.
even bring a scale so
but
that
we just gotta
can
not
show them weight.
let anything fly.
Yeah.
No batteries.
Also,
on site.
Department of Homeland Security is directly behind the park. Heads up.
And they will be open. Department of Homeland Security.
Yes, and they no
do not
sense of
close.
humor. Right.
They have all my information anyway.
And now they have
Let's
all
see.
mine.
All right.
Just
So-
use my name if you get in
Guys.
trouble.
Guys, so key point here: no flying. Keep it civil. Nobody goes to jail. That's not what we need to get exposure. We need to portray ourselves as hobbyists, as professionals, as people who really want to see this thrive in the United States. So, Enoch and Gravy, thank you. I think it's going to be a good deal, and I can't wait to see you guys there. So,
And Zoe's here too.
Zoe, hey, sorry, didn't see you
Yeah,
down
I
there.
actually helped write the website.
That's awesome, Zoe. Great job.
I know, it's been a big
little
part of it.
It's a great
Yeah, I've
website.
been like in the background, because I haven't wanted to hit it up. But like
Sprinkles
Enoch's
of
been doing all the
Parmesan from
work.
afar.
I just sprinkle the Parmesan on it. Yeah, just a little Parmesan from me. But yeah, it's gonna be a good
great.
protest. I think honestly, from everything that everyone's doing, from the protest to organizing around the comments that we have to submit, every little bit helps. And I honestly think we'll be able to show the FAA why these new rules have to change. And I honestly think we'll be successful in getting what we need done. So thank you everybody for the support on this. Like this takes, a village. And this is one issue that I think everyone can agree on that needs support more now than ever. So keep pushing. Again, if you guys have any more ideas, hit up Enoch, hit up the people at the Freedom Coalition. Because we are entering the 11th hour on this stuff. So,
And if you haven't seen it, Rotor Riot put out a great video today talking all about it.
Excellent. All right. So, on that same note, I'm going to cover, and I'm not going to release a document yet because we still have some work to do on this, guys. But this is going to be the I want to cover the main gist of the FPVFC's official response, and it's something that we've worked hard on. And by meaning, I'm going to cover the gist of it. This document is 22 pages long, and nobody wants to read that right now. So, but the reason it is so long is because we're putting a lot of data into it and a lot of I guess analytics and just reasoning and whatnot in our responses. But I do want to cover the general gist of it, and then as soon as this goes live, I'm going to create a video kind of covering each one of these, and I'm going to try and keep it short and simple, but you can use this to kind of formulate your own response. And a couple of things that I would like to say is, number one, thank you to everybody who commented on the talking points, because through that we were able to put this together. And further, we're going to be sending this out to a lot of people in the industry to get their standpoint on it before we officially release it. And we want to give everybody the opportunity to give their 2 cents to it. So first off, we're going to start off with the biggest thing is going to be the connectivity issue. So from the NPRM, standard remote ID requires connectivity to a remote ID USS as well as broadcast. So you need an internet connection and radio frequency broadcast. For limited, it's internet connection only, which means that it creates a problem where, number one, it's a privacy issue. Actually, number one, it doesn't solve any safety or security issues and creates excessive costs for operators as well as over-restrictive flight operation limits. Internet connection from a control station creates privacy issues as raises the risk of personal safety to the operator. We've spoken to, and many of you know, UAS operators who have been shot at, been the victim of assault or battery, and have encountered safety concerns while flying UAS due to the inability to detect and avoid other aircraft due to loud and aggressive bystanders. So I'm sure some of you, if not quite a few of you, have had opportunities, I'm going to say, with people who aren't really keen on us flying our our aircraft around them. So people knowing where we're at essentially is not a good idea. And I'm gonna, throughout this, I want to ask you guys to kind of chime in and let us know what you think.
And Josh, let me know if you want me to put up the graphic that we've created for the document.
Oh yeah, go ahead, please. Second, we kind of jump into some of the data that the FAA has kind of presented. So the FAA asserts that 93% of the existing UAS fleet could be firmware upgraded. The FPVFC says that's 0%. None of the existing UAS, including hobby grade, commercial grade, can be firmware upgraded to comply with this. They also assume that the average cost of a UAS is $114. We suppose that the average cost is closer to $500. In addition, the USS monthly subscription fee would be $2.50 a month. However, that's going to be up to a third party, and the FAA doesn't know what those third parties are going to cost or charge for that. We fully recommend that the FAA eliminate network-based operations for both standard and limited. We also recommend that the limited class be completely done away with.
We want it E-limited.
Yeah, E-limited gone away, leaving only standard and non-equipped. And I'll get to my reasons behind that here in a second. But standard would rely exclusively on RF broadcast only. That's our suggestion. No internet connection, no data broadcast over the internet, no need for cybersecurity, so on and so forth. Any questions or comments on any of that? Sorry, is that per aircraft? As far as I know, no. I actually responded to a post from Fred over in the flight test forums. The $2.50 a month is supposed to be per operator. But again, we don't know what those USS suppliers are going to be charging. Ryfly, the cost is closer to $700. It could be. Our survey was done across the FPVFC membership, and the average, depending, some people, when you factor in, some of the X class versus a tiny whoop, it all starts to average out from a hobbyist standpoint around $500.
Go get data if it didn't exist, and calculate data and information. And so as you put together your own submission, use your personal information, use what data you have. The idea is to, as we've been saying, polite, professional, productive, constructive, and unique.
Absolutely. And guys, what I want to say along those lines is we do have a lot of reasoning and whatnot. You can use the reasoning in this document. Just make sure it's unique enough to stand out. I would love for us to be able to copy and paste this for everybody. That's not the name of the game here. So there's a couple different things here. Minimum performance requirements for remote ID. I'm going to name off a couple real quick. Control station and UAS location, automatic RID connections, time marks, self-testing, tamper resistance, connectivity, error correction, interference considerations, so on and so forth. We broke down each and every one of those. And some of the key ones are going to be obviously control station UAS location. The FPVFC concludes that UAS location supplied by an RF broadcast remote ID solution to be adequate to satisfy remote ID requirements. This should be achieved by a supplemental add-on module from an FAA-approved vendor or from an open source implementation using FAA-approved capabilities. Control station location is not necessary, as this has the potential to put the operator's safety and security at risk. Also, keep in mind when I'm talking about remote ID from this point forward, remote ID and anything like RF broadcast does not apply to non-equipped, which means us, our hobby grade. We basically will get into what the non-equipped is going to be, or what we suggest it should be. But anytime I'm talking about broadcast or remote ID, think of it as you're trying to satisfy that and not just go out and fly and have fun like we do on a daily basis. Automatic remote ID USS connection. USS is going to be unmanned service supplier. These are the people that want to utilize, or basically you're going to connect to, subscribe to get your data across. The FPVFC concludes by eliminating the need for internet broadcast solution. Automatic RID USS connection becomes a non-issue and should be removed from any final rule. RF broadcast solution would not need to connect to a remote ID USS. Self-testing. The RF broadcast remote ID module could have simple LED indicator lights that would show the result of the self-test upon start. If the self-test fails, UAS would only be able to be flown as the UAS or as a non-equipped UAS. So key here is no restriction. If your remote ID fails, you're going to fly it as a non-equipped. If equipped, the failed post could also be configured to trigger an audible alarm on the UAS, as well as a visual alert or warning for any feed. There's no need to restrict takeoff of the UAS. The monitoring could be transmitted as part of the telemetry package of the UAS and supplied to the operator constantly. So we all know that telemetry is a thing. We use it. A lot of people use it. I use it. But remote ID could just come back down as a simple information on the telemetry feed. Tamper resistance, the issue with tamper resistance, obviously if we're going to be doing, if you want to fly as a standard remote ID, which means these are going to be operations in which you want to fly beyond visual line of sight, you want to fly over people, you want to do the things like commercial operators do, that's when you're going to equip one of these units, that it needs to be an add-on module. Obviously, when that comes into play, tamper resistance is not a big issue. I think it's a good thing to not be able to tamper with it, but there's going to be those who do, and that's going to be on them. So no issue with the tamper resistance. Connectivity, no need for internet connectivity with an RF broadcast remote ID solution. Internet connectivity should not be required and should not be implemented due to privacy violations as well as safety and security. Error correction, obviously no issue with that. Interference consideration, no issue with that. On and on and on. We're just going through basically saying, get rid of internet connection, get rid of interconnection. So,
and the way we wrote this, as Josh was saying, is that in the prior documents with the talking points, with the distillation, the FAQ, the audience was our community. Now the audience, of course, is the FAA, and it's specifically some individual that has to sit there and read this thing. So we're trying to make it clear, respectful, and it's very pedantic, and so it just lays out the story. And it's been a little tough to write because it is so dry. We've been advised by people who have done this for decades that this is the way to go.
So second to all the get rid of the internet connection is going to be who has access to the RF broadcast remote ID solution. Obviously, that should not be accessible by the general public, but open to, and we use the term administrator, which is the FAA administrator and the FAA as a whole, and his delegates as well as law enforcement. The technology to protect the operator's location information is insufficiently mature to be effective, and therefore should not be a part of this rule. So obviously, we want to limit who can access this data. We don't want Joe Blow down the street being able to pull up his phone, see where you're flying, come track you down. It's, absolutely not. That is not what needs to happen. You need to be safe, and you need to be free to do what you have the right to do, plain and simple. So let's see. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping through this pretty quickly. I don't want to. Let's see. Manufacturers. So, big deal here is, as we all know, is the FAA wants to limit standard and limited remote ID solutions to FAA-approved manufacturers. Excuse me. As well as limit people who build their own or are amateur built UAS to FRIA sites. So the FPV asserts that the NPRM describes rules and requirements of UAS designers and producers, which are beyond the authority of the FAA. The FAA's authority is restricted to the national airspace. In addition, at the end of 2019, UAS amateur-built fleet in the United States is approximately 200,000 quadcopters, approximately 15% of the 1.3 million recreational drones. This rule would ground all of these UAS and require inspection processes that would be unenforceable, as the FAA would be required to inspect the households of some 200,000 U.S. citizens on an ad hoc schedule. This is explicitly beyond. In addition, the rule stipulates it would be unlawful for individuals to produce amateur-built UAS in terms of remote ID, standard remote ID. This is explicitly beyond the FAA's authority and raises the specter of a Fourth Amendment constitutional challenge, thus detracting from the FAA's goals of regulating the national airspace. So, long story short, they can't control what you do on the ground. In terms of what we're proposing, the FPVFC proposes that to allow recreational UAS flyers to fly in uncontrolled airspace as they do today, with registration for the pilot only. For controlled airspace, recreational flyers would be required to request approval via the Lance application. So basically, we are proposing that unequipped UAS be able to fly in uncontrolled airspace like you do right now. And if you're going to fly in controlled, use the Lance app. So nothing different from today. Sorry, I'm talking fast and drying myself out here.
That sounds really good so far. Thank you for putting that together. And, explaining it.
So we do have a little bit more to go. Design and production requirements. Recreational UAS should not be required to be separately registered. Per NPRM section, not going to go into the sections. Amateur-built UAS are restricted to fly only in FRIAs. We request the concept of a FRIA be eliminated, and in addition, request amateur-built UAS be allowed to fly line of sight, i.e. with a spotter, in uncontrolled airspace, and also line of sight with approval via Lance through controlled airspace. UAS operators have consistently demonstrated the ability to safely operate outside of FRIAs presently, and with the additional controls such as Lance and broadcast remote ID without internet connectivity would meet the FAA's goals. Let's see, from a survey taken, no, I'm not going to go. Oh, here we go. From a survey taken from FPVFC members, the average cost to the owner of a recreational drone exceeds $500, and the average lifespan of a drone is 6 years. So keep in mind, guys, that our drones are fixable, repairable, upgradable. So I still have every single one of my drones that I've ever built. Some of them may have a broken arm that needs to be replaced, but that's easy to do as long as somebody's still making those arms, or you can get one cut. There literally is no ultimate limit to the lifespan of a UAS. I have had. Go ahead.
And the point we're driving home is if the cost is $114 and the lifespan is short and 90% can be upgraded with firmware, which we have debunked all of those, then that's how the FAA was able to say, well, there should be no grandfathering, and this can all happen very quickly. And so we've turned that, we've provided the best proof and data we can to demonstrate that it's a higher priced, it's a longer lifespan, and we all have many more than two of these aircraft. And so the cost to us and the cost to the industry would be significant to cut over to make an aircraft compliant.
Right. So second to that, there's like to go to Dan's point. There's no way to define when an upgraded drone becomes a new drone. So I've exhausted one frame. I have an alien frame that I retired from service after, probably 2.5 years, but all I did was take the electronics out of it, transferred it directly to a new, and it's still the same alien. It's just got different carbon fiber. Does that constitute a brand new? I mean, so it's very difficult to dictate when something becomes brand new.
So under the heading of a solution or a recommendation, we've put forward the idea that for that large, the longer distance beyond visual line of sight mission, where we think that a standard remote ID UAS makes sense, that is broadcast only, then what we're suggesting is a transponder and with a burned in serial number does make sense, and would like that as a module that is fungible, and we can take on and put on take off and put on to a number of different aircraft.
That is a slightly slippery slope, in my opinion. If you're going to say that we concede that having a one FAA certified piece of electronics on there, I worry that's going to completely destroy all the autopilot open source ability, because certified and open source, I'm coming from an aerospace industry perspective, that is absolutely orthogonal, or the antithesis of certified is open source. So I don't think that I'm worried.
I never said open source. I said an electronic module that has a transponder and a burned serial number. So that does not
That's all
have to
it.
be
That's
open
all it
source.
does. So from Ace to kind of alleviate some of your concerns, we're not talking about something that would need to be integrated into a flight controller per se, like a beta flight controller. So there's no way, from what we're proposing, there's no way for it to stop your flight. There's no way for it to change the behavior of your drone, for somebody to take over your drone. It is literally the same thing as a simple transmitter, a VTX, where all it's doing is it's got your serial number, it puts it out on a broadcast, and that's all it does. It takes the data you put into it, whether that's your GPS or anything else that you want to feed into it for it to broadcast. That's all it's doing. There's no control. So think of it as something, a plug and play module. All it would need essentially is power and a connection to a GPS if you choose that route. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm still quite concerned that now you're allowing electronics to be certified. For the long range case, how can I best articulate this? I would rather if we just removed the BVLOS distinction completely, especially if you're just going to be flying in classic off airspace, out in the middle of the mountains, out in the middle of nowhere, in the safety perspective. So there's two things to identify here. There's the security side, which is what RID seems to be designed for, but then there's a safety side, which is RID does absolutely nothing, and having a transponder on the aircraft makes no sense. In the aeronautical, as a private pilot, in the private pilot handbook, you have a order of operations of sorts. So this traffic has to yield to this traffic, to this traffic, to this traffic. So at the very top of the totem pole is balloons. They have to have everyone yield to them. And then at the very bottom of the totem pole would probably be our newfangled devices, the UAVs, which means that we are responsible for deconflicting any collisions with any of the traffic down the totem pole. Therefore, I feel
true, and we're with you. And so if you look at the diagram and the talking points, we've been asserting that for the instance where we're flying visual line of sight, we're suggesting no remote ID equipment at all. For the situation where
Yeah.
we're going beyond visual line of sight, we're suggesting that equipment is probably going to remote ID equipment will be required, and that this has been the situation and the recommendation consistently from the ARC, from ASTM, from the Drone Advisory Committee. So, yeah, I don't think we're going to, just be able to say that there's no equipment. And detect and avoid certainly is the responsibility of the UAS.
Yeah. Anyhow, sorry for interrupting and going on that tangent. Anyhow, continue. And
No, you're fine. I welcome comments every step of the way. Feel free to interrupt me.
I've got something real quick I'd like
Absolutely.
to address as far as that's concerned. If we're gonna do remote ID, we're already completely paranoid about signal frequencies, powers, whether it be for jumping over on somebody else. I mean, I know people that won't even leave the Wi-Fi on their GoPro because they're worried about losing that 2.4 gigahertz link between their FR Sky system. If we have an RF signal that is constantly transponding, then they have to determine something that has to be able to broadcast a minimum distance, which means you're going to have a certain amount of power. You're going to have to designate extra frequencies that are going to be, we'll just call it for simplicity, non-interference frequencies. If they're going to do something, the only way I'd be happy.
This is a whole topic of conversation that the Congress mandated the FAA, working with the FCC, working with the NTIA, come back with a report on how this should work. And so the one point of agreement that does appear to happen is that if the one signal that is command and control appears to be the only one that is a life saving frequency, and the others appear to be able to be shared. And so there's a lot of thought about interference, as well as how to manage this with a protected or licensed spectrum.
Well,
so
it's
unfortunately,
like the Lex
this
system, they already
topic,
did it because it's a passive system. It gets triggered by someone else's broadcast.
yeah, that's true. And
that's the only way that we can operate safely with that, because when you start talking, especially when beyond line of sight issues, we're already dealing with stretching signals to their maximum.
So one of the things, and a lot of people probably gloss over this part in the NPRM, and I kind of glossed over it too, was the interference considerations. When I said I had no issue with this, it's because the FAA and the NPRM is mandating that remote ID cannot interfere with any control or video signal that is coming off a UAS. So the onus would be on them to develop the correct frequency for those remote ID RF broadcasts to function.
Right, but it's not just frequency, it's power.
Understood, but a low enough frequency, and this would be my kind of pushback, because they are looking at a couple different frequencies. A low enough frequency doesn't require a lot of power to transmit sufficient distance to satisfy remote ID. So, and when I say a sufficient distance, you're looking at a 1 to 2 mile range, because that's all anybody would even need.
That's
but-
not necessarily true, though, is it?
No, it is.
Yeah.
I've done research into this, and something that my company has been playing with. We can get 2 to 4 kilometers on 25 milliwatts, doing 400 megahertz.
Well, I'm not saying that the technical aspect's wrong, but 2 miles, when you're talking about objects that are traveling several hundred miles an hour, that's not sufficient distance for them to receive the signal, understand what it is, orient where it is in relation to where they are in the airspace, and then do something about it.
if you read the Pathfinder 3 and the Assured documents, interestingly enough, closure rates are not something that is discussed They just
Okay.
talk about what they talk about as a baseline is what can a person see, and then they characterize things like extended visual line of sight, where there's a remote spotter. So, having to calculate the closure rate at 200 knots, and we're doing 80 knots, and that's that tends to chew up a lot of distance in a hurry. But that appears not to be a point of discussion.
Second
Okay,
to
I was
that,
just curious
Oh, go ahead.
because I'm sorry, it's just dealing with my recreational waiver. That's something that the local Air National Guard base is kicking back and kind of having discussions with the FAA about, is because if I'm flying, it doesn't give their aircraft enough time. They want me essentially out of their airspace.
Right,
And
and
they're trying to use
totally
that as an argument.
totally understand that, but the ultimate letter of the remote ID NPRM is not about safety, because for the most part, whether you're looking at the hobbyist community or the UAS space as a whole, we have the best safety track record, period, hands down, of anything flying in the air, of anything that has ever flown in the air. So this is from a security standpoint. This is not about people detecting and avoiding you in the letter of it. It's about the security aspect, where they want to know where you're flying so that they can respond. Let's say, there's been a couple good instances. There's a wildfire. Somebody's intruding the airspace of the wildfire. Boom, they have a remote ID. They can tag that. Or somebody's flying over the Super Bowl. Boom, they have a remote ID tag. They can trigger that. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that's the elephant in the room. And I think that one way to approach this then, and trying to deflect the whole, elephant in the room thing then, is I worked in counter UAS for 2 years. So I know all about how to shoot down drones with other drones. And that's really, when you come down to something as invading in a fire area or going over a stadium, you have to admit, and I wish we could drive that home to the regulators, is that get rid of RID, because there's always going to be bad actors. The real solution is you just need to give legal ability for people to shoot down drones if they have ownership over that airspace. So I guess we're basically conceding that
Absolutely
stadium
not.
owner.
Yeah, I would kind of push back on that, because then you're going to have Joe Schmo who doesn't want you flying over his backyard, that you're using as a pass through, or you're flying in the park directly behind his house, which you have complete rights to do, and he's going to take offense and blow your drone out of the air. No, absolutely not.
That's why there's regulations, though, under the situations. He's not talking about anybody that can shoot it down, but authorities. If you're talking about a Super Bowl game, they're going to have a police presence or something.
What I'm imagining happening is the FAA is going to mandate that states get compliant, and for states to get compliant, they'll have to get Sky Cops, and the Sky Cops will use anti-drone technology like guns or towers or whatever the hell they need to do to go and police the airspace that the FAA wants policed, and that's how they'll be able to enforce their fines.
I mean, technically, all they have to do is jam 2.4 gigahertz. That really wouldn't be that hard.
And but
everybody's going to blow out everybody's Wi-Fi and cell phones. So,
for a few seconds, and most cell phones are on 5 gigahertz now anyway. I mean, you're talking about jamming, not destroying the electronics. All you have to do is jam a signal temporary. You get jammed almost every time you drive by an airport, just from the overpower of the radar.
So most counter UAS systems right now are directionally based. So when they go to jam the signal, it's only going to be within the cone of fire where the drone's at, not the surrounding area.
Exactly.
And even within that, though,
direction, not Omni.
Then there's dummy systems where it's like Anduril. If you're looking at Real Consequences of Drone Remote ID video that I made, there's a company in there called Anduril, and they have drones that fly into other drones. So, that'll just become an arms race of getting a faster drone to fly into your drone.
Yeah. Anyhow,
they have a $35 million contract already.
I saw that video. They all their drones were stationary. I think if you're moving, you're okay.
So, Josh,
Yeah,
I don't
for
think
now.
there's anything in the NPRM on counter UAS.
No, there's not. No.
That was my suggestion to keep going.
Okay. So obviously, we go through the design and production requirements. Biggest on there is that amateur should be able to number one, not be restricted to FRIAs, be able to continue doing what we do today. I'm going to start paraphrasing because we're kind of coming close to the end of the time here. Let's see. So, at minimum, a non-equipped amateur-built UAS should be able to fly anywhere in uncontrolled airspace, as they may today under current recreational rules. For controlled airspace, amateur-built UAS should be able to fly with LANCE approval. Restricting UAS to FRIAs, which the FAA expects will diminish in number quickly, means small UAS may not be flown over landowners' property, public areas, or aeronautical club permanent flying sites unless these locations are approved by the FAA through an application submitted by a community-based organization. These restrictions create a barrier to the hobby that seeks to create a monopolistic system through which a CBO can mandate both membership fees and club fees to be extorted from UAS operators in order to fly recreationally. Further, since the FAA has failed to identify exactly what CBOs are, there is no current way to comply with this requirement. Since realistically there is only one viable CBO that currently possesses flying locations across the United States, this creates an unfair business practice. These restrictions do not solve any safety or security issues, but will have a negative impact on the youth of the United States by inhibiting participation in aviation activities. So we go on about that. So obviously, free is bad. Restricting people to free is bad. Restricting amateur built, bad. Limited remote ID needs to go away. Standard remote ID needs to be RF broadcast only. We need to continue to do what we do today. Registration should be on a pilot basis for recreational, not on a per drone basis. We do include information on the average average recreational has upwards of 10 to 20 UAS. I'm sure many of you probably have more than that. Any questions, comments, concerns beyond what we've already voiced on the FPV standpoint, and anything that you feel that we should include or think about as we're finalizing this document?
I like the standpoint.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying I like it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is great. I appreciate it. Being a member of the community here, I guess the one thought I have, and if we have an ultimate overreaching point, I'd take sort of the Elon Musk vantage to saying either there's two possibilities. Either we live in a world where we get to fly not only our quads, but in the future our jetpacks or our own personal air vehicles freely and with privacy and with complete freedom, or not. Either we get to live in a world now and in the future where the precedent set is that we get to fly in a free and open society, or we live in a totalitarian regime. That's really what this is going down to.
Yep.
That's my view.
Well, I don't think it's quite that binary, but okay. We hear what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
last point, one of the things that we do put in here, I do want to get this out because I know a lot of people commented this on the talking points. The FPV reiterates its recommendation that operation without a remote ID for aircraft under 250 grams should not be limited to FRIA sites. With that in mind, the FPV further proposes that the FAA eliminate the proposed rule to register all UAS greater than 250 grams and retains current recreational UAS pilot registration. In addition, the FPVFC proposes the 250 gram clip level be raised to 1 kilogram. Even at this mass, the UAS do not create an excessive kinetic energy safety issue as described in the final report for yada, yada, yada. With respect to having to register each UAS above a set mass, the FAA estimates the average number of UAS in the U.S. Recreational fleet is 2 with a lifespan of 3 years. We believe through a survey representative of the hobby that the average number is 15 with the lifespan extending 6 years. So we are asking to raise that clip level from 250 grams to 1 kilogram. And even beyond that, there was one other thing that I wanted to cover.
Shielded ops.
Yes, thank you. That's what it was. We do put in a proposal for shielded operations. What page is that on, Dave? I'm sorry.
Don't know.
Crap.
What I can, well, you're
Control F.
what I can share with shielded operations a couple of days before the protests, I'll be in Washington presenting to the FAA Drone Advisory Committee. There were 36 people working on a committee of UAS facilities maps to refine the grids, and one of the elements that I was able to get a complete agreement on and include in the recommendation to the FAA was shielded operations. So this is little by little.
Absolutely. Our proposal for shielded operations, this would exempt any UAS, commercial or recreational, from any and all remote ID requirements when the following criteria are met. Operation takes place in any airspace except over air traffic controlled airports, and that means over or within the radius thereof. Operation does not exceed an altitude of 50 feet over the tallest object within 1,000 lateral yards of the location of the operator's ground station. And then lands would be required in controlled airspace. Plain and simple. No remote ID. You do what you want. Don't go 50 feet over the tallest object. So if you're sitting next to, biggest tree in the world, have fun. Because if somebody is that low, and this kind of resolves the detect and avoid situation, or that they're probably doing something wrong, and the least of their concerns is your drone. So I did want to get that out. So while not the totality of our response, that was as quick as I could possibly make it.
And so our schedule is we're going to work to post this out to the community over the next couple days. We'll continue to welcome comments, but the idea here is that this is a document with the intended audience as the FAA. And so, of course, don't simply copy and paste. Use the ideas that we've put forward here to create your own unique and personal submission before March 2.
Second to that is I will be creating a video with a much simpler breakdown of this stance, and to make it a little easier for people to digest what our stance is and those key points that they can focus on in their comments.
And answering a question, there's a question here. Does shielded operations put our current 400-foot max AGL at risk? The answer is absolutely not. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we're, particularly in controlled airspace where the AGL is 0, we're trying to make sure that we can have something, even if it's 100 feet, 150 feet, 50 feet, anything is better than the massive number of zeros that we have that you can look at when you're close to an airport and you sign on to LANCs. Good question.
So one of the things I want to really put out there, guys, is not only are we pushing back, but we're pushing farther. So the FAA is coming out with this remote ID NPRM, and we are trying to negate as much of it as we can. We do understand that remote ID is coming in some form, and I hope all of you understand that. And it's not that we don't want to eliminate remote ID in its totality, but the biggest thing I think that we can do is eliminate it for recreational. But not only are we attempting to do that, we're attempting to push further and change some of the other problems that exist. So as you can see, if you've spent any time with the NPRM, a couple of things that they choose to do is go back into the FAA Reauthorization Act and change the language in some of that. And that's what they're doing through this. So that's what we're proposing, that they can, if they're going to change the registration requirements or propose a change to the registration requirements, then we can propose a change for shielded operations or propose a change for a weight limit increase. So the idea here is not only to push back, but to push further. So, and,
What do you
and a lot
currently
of
have as your weight limit?
1 kilogram.
It's not bad.
So I just want you guys all to hopefully we can get this out pretty quickly to you guys as we wrap it up, and then I'll get that video out so that it's a little more concise for everybody. But any comments, questions, anything that we can answer before we wrap the meeting up? I don't want to steal your guys' entire evening, though I do thank you all for being here. You guys are awesome. Going once. Thank you. I appreciate that, Rafla. All right, so going once, going twice, and I think we'll call it. Dave, Dan,
Very good.
everybody.
Thank you. Have a good
Sounds
evening.
good.
Boys.
Thanks, everybody.
Good one, guys.
Thank you.
See you in DC.
Absolutely.
Much love, y'all. Keep fighting the good fight.
Absolutely.